All right. So next round of speakers, I don't know where they are. I see them. Let's welcome Reis Daveler, he's CRO at MediaPress Group, and Matthias Gill, VP Cloud Platform at Broadpeak.
Yeah, first of all, thank you all for joining. And when Marion and I were discussing, we both live in Amsterdam, so we were discussing over a coffee, like what should an event look like. We were basically, we agreed that it should not be a sales pitch, which is very hard for a chief revenue officer responsible for sales, but I'll do my best. So that's maybe to start. MediaPress, for some of you, you may know us, others might not. MediaPress started 3 decades ago. It's a company that does all the metadata aggregation. So we do all the descriptions, all the images that you see on many user interfaces. Not the one that you just saw, but a lot of others, operators, streaming platforms. We provide it, and maybe you've seen the press release last or this week about the further collaboration also with Canal+, where we introduced a new concept of Open ID, and that is basically what we use as a starting point, and also why Matthias is here. So Matthias,
just quick introduction. So I'm Matthias. I'm with Broadpeak. Broadpeak is a technology vendor for any kind of video service provider. So we work with operators, broadcasters, streamers, and we help them to process their content, distribute their content, and monetize it. So we really at the convergence of, like advertising, media, and distribution.
Yeah, and so in the discussion with Marion, we basically said let's try and make this an interactive discussion today. And I'm really happy with everyone here around, but maybe good to because some of you may know each other, others don't. So just hands raise. Studios in the room. Are there any studios here or broadcasters? Broadcasters, okay. I saw telcos as well. Some telcos here, there. CTV OS operators here, there. Yeah, quite a lot. But basically, what we discussed is that we wanted to show you also the theory that we're using for this discussion together, and that's a theory from Ron Adner, and you probably. Some of you may know him. He has written 2 books. One is The Wide Lens, and the other one is Winning the Right Game. And that's the discussion that we would like to have today, because he's a specialist when it comes to ecosystems. And ecosystems is obviously what we're all in. And ecosystem collaboration in times of further fragmentation and global companies is something I think that is potentially of your interest. So we just wait until we have a slide. And then
maybe what I just said, like when you were telling me about like this panel and talking about, like what could be the strategy for our customers to win, for broadcasters, operators, TV OEM. I was very familiar with the concept of playing to win from Roger Martin. But I was not aware of the book you were talking about. And what was interesting to me is like most of our customers, they look at the competition first, and sometimes they try to replicate what's good. But I think what struck me in the book is instead of looking at the competition, sometimes it's better to looking at the ecosystem and find opportunities in the ecosystem. And I think that's really the point of what we are trying to talk about today. Is looking at operators, broadcasters, TV OEMs, see like what are the strengths of each one, and see like how we can work with each other, right?
Yeah. So basically, what he describes in his book are a few risks, for here we go. So the Wide Lens is the first book. Winning the Right Game is the second book, and basically. This is the framework that he created. And he basically says, if you don't see the ecosystem in the correct way, you will never have the right competition, because the game that you play is not the game that others play. And that is partly, let's say, for an operator, the case, or for a broadcaster or a studio, but obviously also for us as a metadata supplier to the industry. And I think that's maybe the first part to mention. So he basically describes two risks there. So obviously the first, why do things go wrong, is what you already explained. Is people are not focusing on the correct ecosystem, or they look at it too narrow. The second part is the co-innovation risk. And the co-innovation risk is what we all know probably about, whether you're a broadcaster or a studio or, let's say, a streaming platform. You rely on partners in the supply chain. And is your partner today your future competitor? Or is that someone who could overtake your position? And how does that impact your decision making? So that's one of the elements that he discusses, and what we
And maybe I can just give a quick example on that one. So my company in 2012, we invented a technology called Multicast ABR. So if you are not familiar with Multicast ABR, it's a technology to basically deliver HTTP with multicast, which is a very, very good fit when you do like big live events with millions of concurrent stream. And we were super excited in 2012 because we thought we were going to revolutionize everything with that technology. And we were, way too early. We didn't really look at the chain, the adoption chain. Like our customers were not ready. The people in the ecosystem were not ready. And we had to wait probably like 5 to 6 years to start having like better sales and to have better adoption. And so I think it was really like kind of one of the flaws that we had at that time is why we had a good technology. We didn't look enough at the ecosystem to make it successful.
Yeah, and another example he gives in the book, for example, is a company that was originally Dutch, Philips. They invented HDTV, as you probably may remember. But sadly enough, they did not have the ability to monetize it as Sony was, because they did not have the studios on board. And as a result, Sony basically was way more successful with that discussion or with winning that game. So that's just a nice example of let's say, adoption risk. Now, why is that relevant? Because there is an ecosystem trap, as he calls it. And the ecosystem trap is something that we wanted to discuss today. Also because we strongly believe, especially as a metadata provider, that the key is in industry collaboration, and that industry collaboration can only work when you have ID consistency. And that means no proprietary IDs. That means workflow wherein the industry can collaborate in every step of the value chain. Whether you're a studio delivering to a broadcaster or a streamer, or a distribution company doing a content licensing deal with Netflix or with a broadcaster. It all comes down to scale in the end. And scale is what's missing today and what's getting even more fragmented. So that's maybe the start of the discussion today. Anyone here who has a specific view from your angle, or from a studio or a CTV vendor or a teleco who believes that, like, what is it that we do differently than, let's say, the great success that Netflix and others have? What can we do differently together to collaborate? Marion.
I don't want to have to name names, so be brave. Come share your view on things. I think it's not that often that we have the opportunity to actually discuss those things and not 10 hours listening to folks and be very top down. So let's be bottom up. So come share your thinking, whether you're a broadcaster, CTV, or else. I'll give you a minute to think about it. Ooh, math.
Hey, I'm Matt. I am one of the co-founders at FX Digital. We build apps for connected TV operating systems, and I guess we're approaching it from the other side. You know, you guys are a lot of you are vendors or operating system manufacturers yourself, but from where I'm seeing, it doesn't look like things are getting less fragmented. If anything, it's probably getting more fragmented, right? I think I always make a point of walking around the halls of IBC and counting how many more operating systems or SaaS vendors there are that are trying to solve this problem. It doesn't feel like everyone is coming together to solve it. It feels like everyone's siloed and trying to solve it individually themselves. Just my two cents on it. Yeah.
What would be one thing that you would like to see happening to, help you?
I think
make them less fragmented.
I think there are lots of providers that have created really great tooling. I would guess the likes of Netflix and YouTube that solve that fragmentation issue for themselves. And there are vendors that allow them to submit that kind of tooling and when they're launching apps. But for us as an agency, I know we wouldn't get that same level of access or tooling to be able to submit applications. So maybe opening up some of that a bit more. But then again, it's their IP, so they're going to kind of protect that. So yeah, we kind of have to just make do with what we can pull together, which is eventually quite impressive considering we don't have all this access that everyone else in the industry seems to have. So
what's interesting is that so we've seen a lot of partnership over the years, and particularly this year, you've mentioned Netflix and TF1 and many more like that. But within the technology, and especially at IBC, I'm always surprised at how much you guys are working together. So it could be that the top dogs who have that direct-to-consumer relationship are not able to do it because of that ego trap, but maybe it is on you guys as technologists to do that. And I see a lot of you guys doing something very specific, solving a specific problem. And of course, instead of trying to be everything to everyone, just focusing on doing this one thing and then relying on what the zone of genius of someone else's, may that be MediaPress on metadata, you guys on, is it monetization as a whole?
Yeah, monetization as a whole, I would say. Yeah.
And maybe as we all know, Netflix is launching also tiers with advertising, which great partnership with TF1 in France as an example. So that basically means that what used to be the business and the bread and butter of linear TV is potentially at risk, or not potentially, it is at risk. And so the question maybe to discuss together is how can you build such collaboration using, let's say, the key elements of let's say, pillars of what Ron Adner calls a minimum viable ecosystem. And a minimum viable ecosystem can be anything simple that, little sales pitch here, that we show at IBC together, Broadpeak and MediaPress, which is in fact ad insertion on replay TV, which is an existing consumer service, TV channels that everyone knows, super simple.
So actually today we work with pretty much 150 operators all across the world, and we enable a lot of like time shift services, personal video recording, and mostly 90% of the viewers are actually watching that, not only live but also that, and 90% of that is totally not monetized today. It's an untapped inventory, and most of the reason is because there's not the right agreement between the content owners and the distributors. So that's one. And number two is because technologically it was very hard until now to make the inventory happen, right? So what we see today is like with this kind of technology, we see that enablers to have more partnership between the content owners or the broadcasters and the distributors. And as a matter of fact, like for example, we have a customer in Spain. They actually negotiate with broadcasters to reduce the licensing fee in exchange of some revenue sharing on time shift TV. So that's the kind of, I would say like win-win stories that we start seeing like on different markets. And for me, it would be great to see that at scale. You were talking about scale. That's where we want to be, right? Like we want to make sure that like the enablers can be activated on a large scale.
Yeah, and the challenge here is obviously adoption rate, adoption again, or let's say chicken egg. How do you solve that chicken egg situation? And Peter, I think you just asked Netflix the right question about the return path data, because that is exactly what, in fact, telcos have. It's not panel data, so it's not yet at the level that you need for an advertiser, but it's basically the foundation of a layer negotiated, for example, against stuff that a streamer or a linear broadcaster has. So bringing together content and distribution is key. The second part that we think is obviously the viewer devices. Whether it's a CTV platform, like Hisense Vida yesterday announced their partnership with DTEC, we see already that also the CTV market is moving into the direction of operators. On top of that, we see another thing happening across markets, at least in Europe, which is consumer consent from the perspective of an operator. Unfortunately, UTIC could not be here today. UTIC is a joint venture between some of the largest pan-European telco operators. So that's Orange, and there's Deutsche Telekom, and a few others. And they basically collaborate on viewer consent. And from that perspective, when you have, let's say, content, you have distribution, a device, and viewer consent, plus viewership data, you have what Ron Adner calls the minimum viable ecosystem. But it won't work from at least our perspective unless you have ID consistency. And the ID consistency is needed to tie all those pieces together to basically automate across the value chain. So that's basically a discussion we would like to have with more of you in the room, like we have had it with Canal Plus already. So happy to hear more from you. At both our stands, we're showcasing the technology, but the technology is only the enabling element. It starts really with the collaboration and solving the business model conflicts together. So that's it. Thank you.